Hi, everybody. Steve Wilder, president of Sorensen Wilder and Associates, back with you for another one of our safety and security podcasts. And I am excited today. I've got a gentleman who is a guy I've known for a long time, have had utmost respect for him over the years, have turned to him on a number of occasions in his company, a friend and a colleague. I'm very excited to welcome Adam Johnson, who is co-founder and chief operating officer of P4 Security in Chicago. And I thought it would be great to have Adam on today because we get so many requests from many of you, our clients and friends of the company, who have asked us for help in selecting an outside agency to work with. And so I thought, let's bring somebody on and talk a little bit about what to look for when you're looking for an outside agency. It's a competitive field. There's some really good agencies out there, and there's some that always try to avoid. So Adam, let me welcome you and say thank you for taking a few minutes to join us this morning. It's just a pleasure to have you, brother.
Hey, Steve, thank you for having me on. Really excited to participate in this discussion.
You guys being Chicago based, us being in the burbs, I guess one of the things, and you and I have talked about a little bit in the past, you guys are getting a lot of visibility right now for the work you're doing in the neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. I don't know a lot about it other than a little bit that you and I have talked about it. Why don't you just maybe share with our listeners a little bit of background on P4 and what you're doing in the communities in Chicago, try to integrate neighborhood patrolling with community safety?
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again. So we started P4 back in 2014. It was founded by Larry Doria and myself, really focusing on what our initial firm was, which is P4 Security Solutions, which emphasizes protection, training, and consultation. On the protection side, we had a large roster of off-duty police officers that we utilized in different functions, an emphasis on executive protection, as well as some more specialized guarding functions. On the training side, it was a full cadre of expert instructors on anything awareness-based, anything security-based, a lot of HR disciplines. We also did a number of tactical trainings. And on the consultation side, risk, threat, vulnerability assessments, program development, and then we have a team that really focuses their efforts on municipalities. It's anything from internal investigations, executive and chief searches, and other functions in that space. And then a few years back, we shifted our emphasis slightly, starting our sister firm, which is P4 Protective Services, which is a union firm that really does a lot of work in commercial real estate, healthcare, and other environments that require union personnel. I guess jumping into neighborhood patrolling, a few years back, we started to seek out some opportunities where neighborhood associations were funding programs to be able to target harden their neighborhoods. A lot of the misperception of that is that P4 would be taking over police functions in those associations within those neighborhoods, but that was actually not the case. Really, what we do is we develop a program to emphasize the following: to deter, report, and observe any events in that area, to liaise with the members of that association, with community leaders, and also to be those eyes and ears for our law enforcement partners in that neighborhood. The way that we were able to do this is we developed a program where we'd be providing patrol vehicles with off-duty and retired personnel, and it's gone really well.
I can still remember sitting home one evening watching the news on TV, and they were doing a thing, and all of a sudden I see the P4 logo up there, and I'm like, hey, I know these guys. And so I watched a little bit more, and I think the media kind of painted a picture that suggested that you guys were augmenting or supplementing law enforcement from an enforcement capacity. So I appreciate that clarification because it kind of left me scratching my head a little bit too. One of the terms, and it seems like, shift gears here for a little bit. One of the terms that seems to just be a hot button right now in everything across the security industry is the word integrated. And one of the newer ones that we're hearing pop up a lot is integrated guarding. Can you explain to the listeners exactly what that term means and how it affects them?
Sure, absolutely. For years and years, as you're well aware of, Steve, um, the approach to contract security was really along the lines of guards and gates, where you'd have physical assets that would be placed at a number of different facilities and different vertical markets. And it was a really based on a one-dimension approach. Well, over time, there was more solutions-based offerings around the technology side, initially with different types of access controls and camera systems and different software offerings, and then even different specializations within the services we provide. We just briefly touched on off-duty police and other offerings that we have under training consultation. And what's happened over the last, I'd say probably decade, where you've seen a significant shift, is really integrating those different categories to strengthen security programs at facilities, at critical infrastructure, and to address varying threats. So an example maybe is, you might have a location that does have a need for security officers. And what's happened over time is really looking at the structure, how many posts, what are the hours of operation, and what could be implemented to actually strengthen those programs. As I had referenced, is that access controls, is that cameras that have different software systems? Does it require a higher level officer or even somebody with a law enforcement background to have responders on premise? And what are other things that could be utilized? Are those mobile patrols or those virtual patrols? P4, we're really proud that we have a security operations center on premise. So that's really been a great tool for us to augment and to provide consistency at a remote level. And I think being able to assess what the needs are of our clientele and being able to offer different service offerings, whether it's to strengthen the security programs or even looking at how to do things in more of an economical um, uh, element of what we do. Because sometimes, it's very expensive to have personnel on site. So when you're able to augment with different systems, sometimes there are ways to be able to make it a little bit more cost effective for our clientele.
And I think the way, and we always avoid getting into anything political on these podcasts, but I think just it's no surprise to anybody when we say this, the condition of the economy for both individuals as well as business and industry is just not encouraging right now. So any way that you can help them cut costs without impeding quality or without compromising safety or well-being of the people, they've got to appreciate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's just not a one size fits all approach.
Right.
And a lot of times what we notice when we secure a new contract and we're working with our clientele, part of our process is after 90 days, we do an assessment and we look at the security program, we look at the personnel, and we try to diagnose if there's better ways or more impactful ways of operating security within those environments. Because it's not just a matter of like, how do we save money, or it's a combination of how effective is your existing program? Why is it operating that way? And sometimes maybe the verdict is, it's a very fluid and effective program, and we wouldn't make any adjustments. But other times, I think there's ways to make improvements.
I agree completely. If you stay fixed in your ways, nothing's going to ever change or get better. One of the things, and it seems like, especially in, and again, here I would sort of walk a fine line so I don't get into anything political, but the changes that are going on in our communities seem to be filtering into businesses as well. And of course, Sorensen Wilder, we do quite a bit of healthcare work. And it seems like more than ever, I've been getting calls lately, not so much hospitals, although we have started getting them from small rural hospitals, as well as from retirement communities who are looking at, and I shouldn't just limit it to healthcare. We've had a couple from the manufacturing sector as well, who for the first time ever are looking at bringing security services into the building. They've never needed them in the past. They never at least felt they needed them, and now they're starting to look at it and say, maybe we do need to look at bringing security in here. When they start looking at, and as I said in the introduction, I've worked with you guys all over the years so many times. I've turned to you a lot of times, but I've also had encounters with companies that may have a big footprint, but don't give you much bang for the buck, trying to be tactful here. If I'm a consumer, I'm a plant manager, I'm a hospital safety officer, I'm a maintenance director at a retirement community, and we're going to start shopping out for contract security services. What are some of the things that I want to be thinking about or looking for from the buyer's end that I may not otherwise take into consideration?
Well, Steve, I think where it starts is really identifying what is the objective of outsourcing security services. And I think understanding and level setting from a client to provider relationship is making sure that those objectives are the same, making sure that they're realistic, understanding what the process looks like to determine what the program is at the facility, at the environment that you're in, to make sure that it yields the results that you're looking at. I think to elaborate even a little further is when we started working within our first client in neighborhood patrols, there was a series of community events and discussions and Q&A and town hall settings to discuss really what the goal is there. And that's where we kind of laid out that our emphasis there is to target harden those environments that we're operating in, to build awareness, to utilize streamlined communication between P4 and the residents in that area, between the residents P4 and municipal leaders, and certainly law enforcement within those communities. And once we were able to establish the fact that we were on the same page as far as goals and objectives, that's when we were able to say, okay, let's start to look at the structure that's needed. Let's take that integrated guarding approach to be able to say, all right, here's the personnel that you need, here's the systems that are in place, here's hardware, vehicles, additional elements within those post orders to make sure that it yields results.
And I agree. And we tell every one of our clients, it's got to start with an assessment. If you don't know where you're starting from, you have no idea where you're going or how you're going to get there. And being healthcare based, or primarily a healthcare consulting group, we always try to equate it with healthcare. And I always tell people, it's no different than going to your doctor. If I go to my doctor and say, hey, doc, I don't feel well, he doesn't just hand me some pills and say, well, here, try these, see if this helps. He's going to order the right tests. He's going to do the workup. He's going to do everything that goes into what we would call an assessment. So he knows what he's working with, and he knows what we have to do to achieve the desired result, in that case, feeling better or being treated appropriately. And I always tell people it starts the same way with what we do in the security industry. If you don't do a comprehensive assessment, you have no idea where you're starting from, and the outcomes are going to show it. It's not going to be the outcomes you desire, and it's probably going to be a lot less than what you were hoping for. And I think you just really reinforced that, and I appreciate that, because it's the same thing. You said it so well. You start out, identify your objectives. If you don't know what you want them to accomplish, it would seem to me that nothing is going to be right.
For sure. I mean, and I think it relates as well. We have healthcare clientele, and specifically in those environments, we provide off-duty police.
Right.
And as I mentioned, similar to the neighborhoods, they're there to observe, report, and deter. It's a security function, but you have a higher level of training and experience within those personnel. How we integrate to certain programs in those environments, to make sure that it really builds culture too. Because the other side of it is, you're well aware of, your security services are part of the culture of any location that you operate in. So
Absolutely.
you force multiply that with the other key stakeholders that are working in those environments, that they're looking for those same threat identifiers, and that they're proactively communicating. And if there is a security event, that everybody's aware of those protocols to minimize the collateral damage. And even with selection, because we look at it this way, when we work with clientele, they're selecting a provider, but we're also selecting clientele. And there's three different categories that we talk about internally with assessing our clientele. Would we be a provider? Would we be a partner, or would we be a commodity? If we feel that we'd be a commodity based off of the needs and the client relations that we'd have, we try to avoid those. We're happy to take on relationships that we're the provider, but really what we're striving for is to be a partner in those environments, because within the partnerships yields those best results.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm sensitive to our time here, Adam, and your time being so kind and sharing some of it with us. One last thought that kind of goes through my mind is a lot of times when we're doing assessments, the vulnerability assessments in this case, we'll talk to the staff. And again, primarily it's in healthcare facilities, but we'll talk to the staff and we'll hear comments suggestive that the staff don't have the faith in security because, a lot of times we'll hear it was something like a patient becoming aggressive in the ED, or a patient becoming aggressive in the behavioral health unit. And when security arrives, all they do is stand there. And the expectation of the nursing staff is if you're wearing some kind of a shirt with a badge on it, whether it's a tin badge or something embroidered on there, you should be helping us out. Then I talk, on the other hand, with the officers, the security officers who are there, and they're pretty clear about it, that the contract that exists between the facility and their agency limits them to observe and report. And if they get involved ethically, morally, whether they want to or not, that their jobs could be in jeopardy. I think a lot of people misunderstand and think that the only thing that they can get out of a contracted agency is observe and report. Is that the case?
That's absolutely not the case. And really, what we're able to do in environments that we operate in, whether it's in healthcare, as we'd referenced before, neighborhood patrols, if it's, we do an abundance of work in commercial real estate. Really what's near and dear to us that helps when we initiate the program is level setting those expectations, whether it's in a lunch and learn environment, or some type of onboarding exercise. But really what helps determine that from environment to environment is how we contractually establish the scope of services, to identify the threats and the needs of the environment. And as it relates to our use of force continuum, that we're constantly evolving internally to make sure that we're facilitating those needs. Really, what we do is, as the use of force continuum escalates, that's where our approach comes into play. We're not there to make arrests, obviously,
Right.
but as threats of bodily harm escalate, we make sure that everybody is on the same page what those protocols are, that our team is appropriately trained to execute and to tactically be able to respond to those situations, to make sure that safety and security in those environments are managed.
And I appreciate the way you said that. Well, Adam, I can't thank you enough for coming on with us today. I've turned to you guys on multiple occasions in the past when, and I can think right off the top of my head in the last couple of years, 2 occasions where clients of ours have had armed intruders and wanted to bring in some armed protection for a short period of time until the dust settled and the investigation was done. And I turned to you guys and you were right there, and you've got a national footprint. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's fantastic, because I knew I'm 99% sure you did, because these were out of state, outside of Illinois, where these events occurred, and you guys were right there. So, Adam, if people have questions for you, or want more information, how can they get a hold of P4?
So the best ways to reach us, we have communication boards through our website, which is p4companies.com. Or we could also be reached at 312-502-1702.
Excellent. And friends, as you know, our code of ethics has always been that we don't recommend companies or products, but I'm sure not hesitant and certainly feel I'm compliant with our code of ethics when I bring good people and good companies like P4 to the table and can benefit from these relationships, tap in on their wisdom, their knowledge, and let you folks know that there are good companies out there that we work with. So Adam, again, thank you so much. It means so much to have you guys on. I'm sure we're going to ask you to come back at some point in the future, and we'll talk into some more specific areas because this is such a dynamic industry and just so much happening that I can't thank you enough, brother.
Steve, really appreciate your partnership, friendship, and the opportunity to come on and talk about the industry.
Thank you. And folks, we got a lot more interesting podcasts coming up on the schedule. So stay tuned and keep your ideas and questions coming. Again, this is Steve Wilder, Sorensen Wilder and Associates in Bradley, Illinois, and thanks for joining us.